Texas, 1875. The sun burned mercilessly over Copper Creek County, where drought had turned the land brittle and desperate. Isaiah Freeman wiped sweat from his brow as he led his tired mule down the dusty road. At 15, he carried himself with the quiet dignity his father had instilled in him, a necessary armor for a former slave son in these uneasy years after emancipation. The small parcel of land his father had acquired through the Southern Homestead Act lay 3 miles ahead. But Isaiah's water canteen had run dry hours ago. His throat felt like sandpaper, his lips cracked and bleeding. The community well at the edge of town was his only hope. As he approached the stone well, Isaiah saw 3 white men lounging in the shade. He recognized Wade Thornton, the largest cattle rancher in the county, and his foreman. Their horses drank from the trough, while the men passed a bottle between them. Isaiah hesitated, but his thirst drove him forward. He removed his hat respectfully as he approached. "Afternoon, gentlemen. Might I draw some water for me and my mule? Been working Mr. Lewis's field since sunrise?" Thornton looked up, his weathered face hardening. "This well's for tax-paying citizens, boy?" "My father pays his taxes, sir," Isaiah replied carefully. "We've been landowners for 2 years now. 10 acres of worthless dirt doesn't make you a citizen." One of the foremen snickered. That government land should have gone to real Americans. Isaiah stood his ground, though his heart pounded. The water belongs to everyone in the county. That's the law. Thornton stood, his considerable height casting a shadow over Isaiah. "You're telling me about the law? Your kind barely understands the concept." He kicked dirt toward the boy. "There's a creek 5 miles east. Go drink with the other animals." Isaiah knew the creek Thornton mentioned it had been dry for weeks. He glanced at the well, calculating whether he could draw water quickly and leave before the situation escalated. As if reading his thoughts, Thornton stepped closer. "Try it, and you'll wish you hadn't." For a moment, Isaiah considered fighting not with fists, but with the law his father believed in so strongly, Mr. Lewis, whose fields he worked, was a fair man who served on the county council. He might intercede. But Isaiah had seen what happened to black men who challenged the established order, even with law on their side. His father still bore scars from such a lesson. "Good day, then," Isaiah said finally, replacing his hat and turning away, dignity intact but thirst unquenched. "That's right," Thornton called after him. "Your daddy taught you well. Know your place, and you might live to see 20. The laughter of the men followed Isaiah down the road. His mule whined plaintively, its own thirst adding to Isaiah's burden of responsibility. He patted the animal's neck. "Just a little further, Belle. Pa will know what to do." As Isaiah crested the hill overlooking their modest homestead, thunder rumbled in the distance, the first such sound in months. He glanced up at clouds gathering on the horizon, wondering if the long-awaited rain might finally come. Solomon Freeman was repairing a fence when Isaiah returned. Despite 10 years of freedom, Solomon's back still bore the webbed scars of his enslaved past. It's visible now as sweat soaked through his shirt. At 45, he moved with the deliberate care of a man who had survived by calculating each action. "Isaiah," he called, noting his son's parched appearance and the tired mule. "What happened?" After Isaiah explained the incident at the well, Solomon's expression darkened. They turned him away from the well. But the sky remembered. If this story stirs something in your heart, honor it. Like this video and subscribe to No Filter America. Hear forgotten voices rise. "Did they touch you?" "No, sir. Just words." Solomon nodded, relief mixing with familiar anger. "Words can't break your bones." He led the mule to their own small, little more than a shallow pit that had yielded only mud for weeks. "We'll water Belle first, then ourselves." Isaiah watched his father work the well pump futilely. "It's dry, Pa. Has been since Monday." Solomon straightened, studying the sky. "Those clouds might bring relief. Meanwhile, we have the water in the rain, barreled just enough for drinking tonight." As they walked to the small cabin Solomon had built with his own hands, Isaiah noticed his mother in the vegetable garden, singing softly as she tended the withering plants. Ruth Freeman had been born free in Philadelphia, an educated woman who had come south after the war to teach at a freedmen's school. Her marriage to Solomon had scandalized white society and disappointed her northern colleagues. But 10 years later, her quiet determination remained unshaken. "Those tomato plants are more dust than leaf now," Solomon observed. Ruth looked up, wiping her brow. "They're fighters like us." She noticed Isaiah's condition immediately. "What's happened?" After Isaiah repeated his story, Ruth's face hardened in a way he rarely saw. She had always been the voice of patient progress, believing education and perseverance would eventually overcome prejudice. "This can't continue," she said. "That well was dug with county funds. Black taxpayers contributed to the law, and reality rarely walked the same path in Copper Creek," Solomon replied wearily. "I'll ride to the Lewis farm tomorrow, see if we can draw water from their well until the drought breaks." That evening, the family gathered on their small porch, sharing the precious water from the rain barrel. The approaching storm seemed to stall on the horizon, tantalizing but distant. Isaiah watched his parents' quiet conversation, their hands intertwined. Despite everything, they had built something remarkable here, 10 acres of their own land. A sturdy cabin, crops that provided food and modest income in good years. It was a daily defiance against a system designed to prevent exactly this kind of black independence. "Tomorrow will be better," Solomon said. A phrase Isaiah had heard all his life, his father's stubborn promise against all evidence. As darkness fell, Isaiah prayed not for justice or revenge, but simply for rain, the great equalizer that showed no preference for white fields or black, that could save their crops and replenish their well. What he couldn't know was how specifically that prayer would be answered. Isaiah woke to the sound of thunder directly overhead. He bolted upright, hope surging through him. Rain. The drought might finally break. He rushed outside in his nightshirt, expecting to feel the glorious sensation of water on his skin, but the air around their cabin remained dry. The thunder continued to rumble, and flashes of lightning illuminated strange, localized clouds that seemed to hover directly above their property. Solomon and Ruth joined him, equally confused. "What manner of storm is this?" Solomon wondered aloud, staring upward. Before anyone could answer, the clouds burst open, but only above their 10 acres. Rain poured down in a perfect rectangle, matching the boundaries of their property. Beyond their fence line, the land remained completely dry. Isaiah ran to the property edge in disbelief. The dividing line was supernatural in its precision on one side, a drenching downpour. On the other, parched earth under clear sky. He stood with one foot in each condition, rain soaking half his body, while the other half remained dry. "My God," Ruth whispered, her education offering no explanation for this phenomenon. Solomon stood silently in the rain, his face upturned, water streaming over features etched with both wonder and caution. As a man who had witnessed humanity's cruelest capabilities, he understood that even miracles could bring danger. By sunrise, the rain had filled their well, soaked their fields, and created a small pond in the lowest part of their land. Their 10 acres stood as an emerald island in a sea of dust-brown countryside, the dividing line still supernaturally. Exact words spread quickly. By mid-morning, neighbors began arriving to witness the miracle. The Lewis family, for whom Isaiah occasionally worked, stared in astonishment at the perfect rectangular pattern of the rainfall. "It's like the Lord drew a map around your property, Freeman," Mr. Lewis said, his voice hushed with superstitious awe. "Never seen anything like it in 60 years. Others were less reverent. "Witchcraft," muttered Mrs. Gunderson, crossing herself as she hurried away. "The devil's work." Wade Thornton arrived with his foreman just before noon. He sat atop his horse at the edge of the Freeman property, hat pushed back, staring at the muddy ground that ended precisely at the boundary line. "Quite a trick, Freeman," he called. "How'd you manage it?" Solomon stood his ground. "No trick, Mr. Thornton. Just a blessing we didn't ask for, but gratefully accept." Thornton's eyes narrowed as they fell on Isaiah. "Interesting timing, boy. Comes home complaining about being denied water, and suddenly you're the only folks with rain. He spat on the dry ground of his side of the boundary, almost like someone's trying to make a point. The crowd that had gathered shifted uncomfortably. In Copper Creek County, accusations of supernatural interference could be as dangerous as those of theft or violence. Some folks see God's blessing as a personal insult. Ruth joined them, her expression troubled. If this rain doesn't spread to other farms soon, we may face more than just talk. Isaiah looked across their miraculously watered land to the bond-rye fields beyond. The dividing line between blessed and barren felt suddenly ominous. Like a target had been painted around their family's hard-won piece of freedom. For 3 days, the miracle continued. Rain fell exclusively on the Freemans' property each afternoon, stopping precisely at their boundary lines. Their well overflowed, their crops flourished, and the small pond grew large enough to attract waterfowl. Meanwhile, the surrounding county remained locked in drought. Crops withered, livestock grew gaunt, and tempers shortened with each rainless day. The supernatural division became impossible to ignore or explain away. Found their fence cut in 3 places. During the night, someone had led cattle onto their property to drink from the pond. The animals had trampled a section of young corn. They didn't even ask, Isaiah said bitterly as he and Solomon repaired the fence. We would have shared the water. Solomon worked silently for a moment. Asking would mean acknowledging we have rights to something they want. Some folks would. Rather steal than do that. By midday, 5 white farmers had approached their property line. Unlike the trespassers, these men came openly, if not humbly. Freeman called Elijah Porter, who owned 50 acres adjoining their land. My cattle are dying. I've got young calves that won't survive another day without water. Solomon studied the men carefully. Porter had never been openly hostile, but neither had he been friendly. The others were similar, not allies, but not enemies. You're welcome to water your animals at our pond, Solomon finally said. But I'll ask you to come through the front gate and keep them off our crops. The men exchanged glances, their desperation warring with pride. Porter removed his hat. Appreciated. We'll be careful with your plantings. As the men led their thirsty cattle to the pond, Ruth approached Solomon. That was well done, she said quietly. But Wade Thornton won't come asking nicely. No, Solomon agreed. I'll either take what he wants or make sure no one has it. That evening, Reverend Micah Thomas from the small black church 3 miles away visited the Freeman home. The elderly preacher had been born into slavery like Solomon, but had secretly learned to read the Bible and had ministered to fellow slaves even before emancipation. Word of your blessing has spread beyond the county, he said, accepting a cup of precious coffee from Ruth. Folks are calling it a sign. Sign of what? Solomon asked warily. Depends who you ask. The Reverend sipped his coffee. Some of our people see divine justice, the last becoming first, the denied becoming blessed. Others see it as proof of ... double quotes. He hesitated. Of powers they shouldn't speak of, the Reverend finished carefully. Old ways brought from Africa. Ruth frowned. That's superstitious nonsense. There's a natural explanation. Even if we don't understand it yet, perhaps the Reverend acknowledged. But perception matters more than truth in times like these. And some white folks are saying your boy cursed the county when he was denied water? All eyes turned to Isaiah, who stiffened. I didn't curse anyone. I just prayed for rain. A prayer powerfully answered, the Reverend said gently. But specific answers can be as dangerous as curses to those who feel excluded from God's favor. After the Reverend left, the family sat in troubled silence. Their miracle had become a dividing line in more ways than one, separating not just the watered from the dry, but belief from suspicion, gratitude from resentment. What should we do? Isaiah finally asked. Solomon looked out the window at their flourishing fields visible in the moonlight. We keep living. We share what we can, and we stay watchful. Sheriff Thomas Collier arrived the next morning, his badge catching the sunlight as he dismounted in front of the Freeman cabin. 2. Deputies flanked him, hands resting casually near their holstered guns. Solomon, the sheriff, nodded curtly. Though not openly hostile like Thornton, Collier believed firmly in the established order and had little patience for anything that disrupted it. Sheriff Solomon replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "What brings you out this way?" Complaints. Collier surveyed the lush greenery of the Freeman property, his expression unreadable, in curiosity about this. "Situation you've got here. We didn't cause the rain," Sheriff Solomon said evenly. "We're sharing the water with neighbors." "Who ask?" "That's part of the problem. Got ranchers fighting over access rights to your pond. Porter and Johnson nearly came to blows yesterday." The sheriff frowned. "And Thornton's filed a formal complaint claiming you've diverted water from the natural watershed." Ruth, who had joined them on the porch, couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. "Diverted rainwater that falls from the sky. That's absurd." The sheriff's gaze hardened. "Ma'am, I'm not here to debate the science or theology of this situation. Hear about the growing unrest it's causing. So you're blaming us for how others are reacting to a natural phenomenon?" Ruth challenged. "Ruth," Solomon warned quietly. Sheriff Collier removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm not blaming anyone yet, but this county's on edge. Drought makes men desperate, and desperate men do foolish things. Like deny a boy water from a public well?" Isaiah spoke up from where he'd been listening at the edge of the porch. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "I heard about that incident. Unfortunate, but not illegal. The county well has unwritten rules about usage. Priorities. Unwritten because they'd be unconstitutional if actually recorded," Ruth said sharply. Tension crackled between them until Solomon stepped forward. "What exactly are you asking of us, Sheriff?" Collier replaced his hat. "For now, just be careful. Some folks are saying this rain business started after your boy was turned away at the well. They're calling it retribution." "It's not," Isaiah insisted. "I can't control the weather." "Maybe not intentionally," one of the deputies muttered, just loud enough to be heard. The sheriff silenced him with a look before turning back to Solomon. "I'm trying to prevent trouble before it starts, Freeman. Keep your boy close to home, and consider how you might that we'd share this blessing more widely." After the lawman departed, Isaiah helped his father carry water to their most distant field, both working in troubled silence. "They think I caused this," Isaiah finally said, "like I'm some kind of ... "Don't give it a voice," Solomon interrupted. "People fear what they don't understand, and fear makes them dangerous. But I didn't do anything wrong. In their eyes, our very success is wrong," Solomon replied, his voice heavy with the weight of experience. Clash. A black family with flourishing fields while white farms wither contradicts everything they believe about the natural order. Isaiah stared at the perfect line where their green crops met the neighbors' brown ones. "Will it ever change, Pa?" Solomon straightened, looking his son in the eye. "It already is changing. 10 years ago we couldn't own this land. Your mother couldn't teach openly. You couldn't learn to read." He gestured toward their cabin. "Every seed we plant, every wall we build, every day we stand as free people on our own soil, that's change." The threat came after midnight. Isaiah woke to the sound of horses approaching, moving with purpose rather than caution. Through the small window near his bed, he saw the flicker of torches. "Pa!" he called, already pulling on his trousers. "Riders coming." Solomon was instantly alert, reaching for the shotgun he kept loaded, but hidden. "Ruth, take Isaiah to the root cellar." "Now, can help," Isaiah protested. "You help by staying alive," Solomon replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Go with your mother." Ruth lit a small lamp and led Isaiah to the trapdoor beneath the kitchen table. The root cellar was shallow, but well concealed, dug by Solomon during their first year on the land, a precaution born of history and foresight. "Your father will handle this," Ruth whispered as they descended. "He knows how to talk to men like these." Isaiah wasn't so sure. He'd heard stories of night riders, of cabins burned and families terrorized for far less provocation than miraculous. Rain during drought. Above, they heard Solomon step onto the porch, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight. The approaching horses slowed, then stopped. "That's far. Your cattle would be welcome me too, if you'd come respectfully in daylight." A different voice called out, "It ain't natural, this rain of yours." Boy did something, used some kind of conjuring. Murmurs of agreement rose from the gathered men. Isaiah felt sick. His prayer for rain had somehow become twisted into an accusation of witchcraft. My son prayed for rain, same as every farmer in this county, Solomon said. If God chose to answer his prayer particularly, that's between the Lord and the boy. Mighty specific answer, Thornton replied. Almost like someone's trying to make a point about that well incident. Or maybe, if any most skeptical farmers couldn't help but smile as they calculated what this meant for their dying crops. In the midst of the celebration, Isaiah stood with his parents, all three equally stunned by the timing. The supernatural division had ended as mysteriously as it had begun. A sign, Reverend Thomas murmured nearby. The lesson has been taught. What lesson? Isaiah asked. The old preacher smiled. That remains for each heart to determine. 2 days later, with rain still falling steadily across Copper Creek County, the Freeman family gathered around their table for a decision. Hearing had been adjourned indefinitely once the general rainfall began, the immediate crisis apparently resolved.
We could stay, Solomon
Acknowledged. With the drought broken, much of the hostility might fade. Ruth shook her head. Until the next crisis, the next reason to turn against us. This miracle protected us temporarily, but it also marked us. Isaiah understood his mother's concern, as though many now viewed their family with superstitious respect rather than hostility. That perception could change with the next challenge. Wade Thornton and his allies had retreated but not changed their hearts. I've been thinking about what happened, Isaiah said carefully, about why the rain fell only on our land and then everywhere. His parents waited, giving him space to articulate thoughts he'd been struggling with since the courthouse. Maybe it wasn't about us specifically. Maybe it was about making people see the injustice, how it feels when something essential is withheld based on who you are. Solomon studied his son with pride. That's wisdom beyond your years, Isaiah. So what do we do now? Isaiah asked. Ruth placed a letter on the table, her brother's latest invitation to Ohio. We have options that many in our situation don't. We can stay and fight for what's ours, or we can seek a better chance elsewhere. Solomon covered her hand with his. We built something precious here, not just a farm, but a home. Yet home isn't just a place. It's where we can thrive together in safety. After hours of discussion, weighing fear against belonging, opportunity against attachment, they reached their decision. They would sell their now valuable rain-soaked land not to Thornton, but to a coalition of 3 black families from the nearby settlement, families who would farm together and support each other against whatever challenges came. With the proceeds, they would journey to Ohio, where Ruth's brother had described growing communities of free black farmers establishing themselves without the immediate shadow of former enslavement hanging over them. 2 weeks later, as they packed their wagon for the journey north, Isaiah took a final walk around the property. The ponds still sparkled in the sun, their crops still grew green and tall. Now neighboring fields matched their vitality, the dividing line erased by days of general rainfall. At the edge of the property, he found Wade Thornton waiting on horseback. You're really leaving then, Thornton said. Not quite a question. Isaiah tensed, but stood his ground. Yes, sir. Sold the land to the Johnson families. Thornton frowned. Could have got a better price from me. Some things matter more than price, Isaiah replied. A long silence stretched between them, the powerful rancher who had denied water to a thirsty boy, and the young man who had witnessed a miracle in response. That rain business, Thornton finally said. You really didn't have anything to do with it? Isaiah met his gaze directly. Nothing beyond praying, sir. Same as everyone else during drought. Thornton seemed to wrestle with this, his worldview challenged by events he couldn't explain. Well, he said eventually, good journey. To you, then. As Thornton rode away, Isaiah realized the man hadn't apologized or acknowledged any wrongdoing. Some hearts remained unchanged even by miracles, but others, perhaps including his own, had been transformed by the experience. Returning to the cabin, he found his parents securing the last of their belongings to the wagon. Ready? Solomon asked, offering Isaiah a hand up onto the seat. Isaiah took one last look at the land that had been their battlefield, and there, blessing, yes, Pa, I'm ready. As the Freeman family drove away from Copper Creek County, the rain continued to fall equally on all lands, former slave and former master, black and white, just and unjust alike. The divine lesson had been delivered. What humanity would learn from it remained to be seen. For Isaiah, however, the message was clear. Justice might come in mysterious ways and perfect timing, but the journey toward it required both faith and action, both miracle and movement. Somewhere ahead lay a place where he wouldn't be denied water based on the color of his skin, and with every mile northward, they drew closer to that promised land. When men closed their hands, the heavens opened theirs. Do you believe justice can come from beyond? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved your spirit, like the video and subscribe to No Filter America, where the rain always remembers the thirsty.